we now have the interview, and I'm not throwing any shade on any of our past interviews. But Debbie said, I need royalties. Debbie, you are too much. You are too much. She be cracking me up. I'll give you royalties. I might have a couple pennies somewhere when I spit those bars. Okay, y'all. But like I said, I'm not throwing any shade on any of our past interviews. But this interview, okay, maybe I'll say it this way: one of my favorites. One of my favorites. Yeah. I almost said it's in my top 3, and it ain't 2 or 3. But but I think one of the things that I was so excited about, or one of the reasons why I love this interview so much, because I was so excited about it, because I haven't been able to have a one-on-one interaction with her. AI the Anomaly is who we're talking about. One of my favorite rappers. She is so gifted, so filled with the Spirit, and so about God's business in all that she does. So I was so excited when she graciously accepted the invite to be interviewed. You'll be able to see the full-length version of this interview shortly. I think we might just drop it later today, because I just want to get it out. So I'm a break protocol, and we're gonna drop it later today on this channel, so you can get the full thing. You can see it here or at the Freedom Story Media channel as well, though. But without further ado, we're going to get to the first portion of this, where just like every other interview, we get into her Freedom Story. But oh wait, I guess we got to do our little intro piece, because this is the main event. I'm so silly. We didn't need to do that. So here we go. The first portion of this interview, she shares a bit about her story, and we call it her freedom story. So let's go ahead and get into that, shall we? But let's talk about the root of that story. So you grew up in Buffalo, New York, is that right?
Yep. East Side.
Okay. East Side, of course, as the song very clearly represented. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, as you were young, and kind of the family situation and some of the challenges of that part of your journey.
Yeah. So I was, now I try to be careful on how I start the story, because I realized that the way that I was starting my story, I overstand the whole situation, because usually I say, I grew up in a tough situation, traumatic, and all of these things, which it was. To be born to a woman who has an addictive habit and substance abuse, and to not know your father, and to be placed in a foster care, that stuff is traumatic. But I'm trying to learn to shift the way that I started. And for me, I was given this interesting opportunity as a little girl to navigate through what seemed like these would be barriers in my life, to navigate through that to get to the meat of who I needed to become. That's kind of like how I'm looking at it for now. Just instead of looking at it like, I was definitely dealt some interesting cards. You know what I'm saying? Labeled a failure to thrive, and all of the odds, all of the statistics. Grew up in the hood, grew up on it, East Side. East Side is deemed as not much good could come from it. But you know what? All of those things were opportunities. Yeah. All of those things made me who I am. I'm gentle and I'm tough. I grew up being taught, you don't speak until spoken to, which sometimes we feel like, well, my voice gets muffled. It does, but I also learned how to be respectful and become an active listener, So just, thinking about those things. But yeah, I grew up with amazing opportunities to live within a tough circumstance. And I was able to navigate because I had mentors and individuals who saw potential in me, and they continue to give me more opportunities. And I learned how to speak, you know, how to find my voice through arts. And that's what I do within my life. You know, I never let go of arts and education.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. I got the ball right in front of my face. So Jariel, I mean, she really set the table well there in regards to her story. Was there anything in that portion of it that really stirred in you, or that you really thought was like, that was good, that was quality?
I like how she, took the negative that happened to her and turned it to a positive, kind of like what the Lord does, like seeing things as, yes, that was bad, but that also taught me this. And then
exactly
not dwelling on, because we can get stuck and be like, oh, I had a rough childhood, but using those things like, well, it taught me this. And because it taught me this, I can do this.
Yeah. And one of the things that I walked away from the interview feeling personally was like, man, so I've heard her tell her story before, and she did tell it differently in this interview. And what impacted me was like the intentionality with the words and the way we say things, like, and the way that can shift even our own relation to our story. Because the truth is, there's so much like we don't actually engage with life based on reality. If we want to say the truth, our life isn't about the reality around us. It's about our experience of that, the way we interpret the reality around us, and the narrative that we live in. I was who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody, and they were explaining how, I was in a leadership conversation with some people that are part of Exponential, and the guy leading the conversation talked about the power of narrative, and he said that he remembered having an argument with his wife when they came back from this dinner party, because she was asking if he liked the food, or if she wanted him to cook him, or if he wanted her to cook this food or something like that. And then he said, I don't know why you would do that. And so she took that like negatively, like, it's like, oh, what, you questioning why am I doing it? Da, da, da. And for him, he was like, oh, I didn't want you to have to go through all the trouble of doing all this cooking. We just came back from this party. Da, 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 da. And so she was all in her feelings for a while about it. And then he was like, what's going on? So they had a conversation. He explained what he actually meant, and she was like, oh, so it was like a complete misunderstanding. But the truth was, she was still mad even after that. The narrative, she sat in that narrative for long enough that the truth, the reality didn't change that. Like, I'm still mad. This is what I'm feeling. So as I listen to AI reshape her story and talk about, she talks about the opportunities. And it almost seems, oh, that's cheesy, that's silly. But like, if you can really start looking at your past and see the challenges as opportunities, what do you think that starts to tell our brain as we face the next challenge, as we face the next struggle? We remember, oh, this is an opportunity. Exactly. Where I can see the Lord do something different. So like, I was like, oh man, I need to start reshaping the way I talk about things. Even if I'm not saying it out loud, thinking about it, the conversation I have with my head, like, So you guys leave some comments, let us know some things that you kind of pulled out of that first segment.